Detroit Lake City Council is called to order, and I'd like to invite you all to please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before I forget, Jamie Marks won't be here tonight. Her mother is ill and she's away with her. So, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular city council meeting held on November 12th and a special city council planning session held on October 27th. Is there anyone in the audience or any member of the council that wishes to amend or change anything in the minutes? Ron?
I was looking through the minutes that we had for last month, and we had quite a discussion involving Peter Street, and I don't see anything at all on that discussion. We had people here from the business involved and so forth, and I like to have those minutes put in there for.
So that's from the November 12th meeting?
Yes.
Well, maybe what we should do is we'll have the minutes amended and we'll approve them in the next meeting, if that's all right.
Okay.
Is that all right with the council?
I move for approval of the October 27th minutes.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes from the October 27th, 2014 council meeting. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. The consent agenda is before the council, and all items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered separately in its normal sequence on the agenda. Is there any member of the audience or any council member that wishes to either add or delete an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda as printed. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. At this time, I will adjourn the regular meeting of the City Council and call to order a public hearing, and I'm going to move this around a little bit. I'd like to move to the public hearing, item number 4E, and that is actually a continuation of a public hearing that we had last month regarding an appeal for the proposed assessment for weed cutting at the property owned by Paul Renner in the Timber Creek 3rd Edition and Stonebrook Villas. And if I could just have one of our city staff recap the issue again for the council and for the audience.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Renner appealed his assessment in Stonebrook Villas. He indicated that he had sprayed those weeds on that property and thought he had taken care of that. And he also indicated at that time that we had assessed him for mowing weeds on the boulevards and property he owns up in the Timber Creek additions. And he indicated that his insurance company his insurance coverage prevented him from being able to mow the boulevard areas in the addition. And so I did follow up with him on that. I did send him a letter. We appreciated the fact that Mr. Renner did go ahead and spray the weeds for the property up in Stonebrook Villa, but we didn't. I was not aware of it. Public Works Director Green was not aware of it, nor was Assistant Public Works Director Stiegel aware of it. And so when we did our follow-up check on that, the weeds were still standing, so we did have the contractor who mows weeds for the city go in and mow that. Given that Mr. Renner did spray the weeds, we offered to reduce the amount of that assessment by 50%. I enclosed a copy of the letter which I sent to Mr. Renner regarding that matter. And then on the assessment in Timber Creek, we found that there was an error in computing the amount of the assessment. The amount should have been, I believe it's approximately $169,000. Or 169,000. I think Paul was out there, I said $169. And We had inadvertently charged him for cutting it 4 times. It was in reality only cut once.
So
we
on-
did send that letter, and that would be our recommendation. I
Okay.
did not have a chance to speak directly to Mr. Bennett.
Okay, so just for clarification for the council, on this resolution, these numbers that are printed are incorrect, right?
Correct.
So for the Timber Creek third edition, the number should be $169.79, right?
That's correct.
And then for the Stonebrook Villas, instead of $926.85, we're proposing $463.43, correct?
That's correct.
Can you repeat those, Mayor?
$169.79 for Timber Creek Third, and $463.43 for Stonebrook Villas. Okay, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the issue of the proposed assessment for weed cutting at Timber Creek Third Edition and Stonebrook Villas, both properties owned by Paul Renner? And Paul, please, go ahead, Paul. Just for our records, would you state your name and address, please?
Paul Renner, 1373 Burrows Road. Received a letter from Bob saying that they're going to reduce the assessment by 50%. I want to thank you for your consideration and so forth for that. However, I still feel as though that, that isn't just. It just isn't. In the original letter, and I'm going to give this to Brad here, and Bob wrote in his letter here that I did not notify anybody at the Public Works that I had sprayed the weeds. In previous years, what we've done is we went out and we've looked at the individual parcels and if it needs to be sprayed versus cutting so that we're not spreading the thistle seed and so forth, we'll spray. And in past years, that's what we've done. We went out, we've always taken care of what we needed to do, and that was the end of it. This year, of course, we did the very same thing. Went out and took care of it, and I get a letter in the mail for, I don't know, what, $1,500, $1,800, in assessments. Right? I didn't add them all up. A little bit confused on how you arrived on all of it. But anyhow, so when you say that I didn't notify the city and the Public Works in previous years, we've never done that. And in your original letter here, it doesn't state anything about, when you're complete or anything like that, that you have to notify the city. And if you can look at that, and maybe I'm overlooking something here, but with that form there, it's a state form, and I realize that that's what you're using, a generic form. And what you need to do is if you want somebody to take and notify you when the work is complete, put an addendum in or attached letter to it saying that when you're complete, please call Brad Green, Terry Stiegel, or whatever. I don't have a problem with the rules or anything like that, but you got to take and put all the rules on a piece of paper, and then that's what we go by. And hopefully we don't change the rules halfway down the road here, because I'm a little bit lost on this. We followed everything on the sheet right, like we always have in the other years, and here we are. We got a bill for assessments for weed cutting. When they actually went up and they mowed the weeds, now the whole problem that arises out of that, now I can continue to take and try and eradicate these weeds for the next 3, 4, 5 years, because all of a sudden now we've got seed everywhere again now.
Okay.
So in my opinion, we followed everything just exactly what the letter said and so forth. And like I say again, I don't have a problem with the rules as long as everybody knows what the rules are.
Okay, is it?
On that letter, am I overlooking anything, Brad? Does it say anything that I have where it
No,
says?
it's all stated in there. And we have been very good, Paul's been very good to work with, a number of developments. We've worked well together. We always talk to them or try to. What is happening too is what's going to come to is in the upcoming years now, these are now neighborhoods, not really developments. In our city ordinance, we will change. This is a weed notification, like you said, standard one for the county, and that stipulates this. But in the city, we have an ordinance that restricts grass over 6 inches long, which now when we start getting complaints from the neighborhood, and Mr. Zeman has been on a couple of these meetings, that we're going to, in these developments where there's numerous houses, they're going to have to start calling more neighborhood lawn cutting.
I would have, we have not given that notice to them on this particular property.
Is there anyone on the council that has any questions they'd like to put forth to Mr. Renner?
So the same procedure was used this past season as other seasons as far as your reaction?
We've had in the last, well, since 2001, if they see something out there that they don't like, they send us a letter, we go out and we do whatever it is, you know, whether they mow, spray, and we put a lot of chemical down in the very first years, you know, they can eradicate thistles, they're tough to get rid of. And we've always done that, and that's been the end of it, never heard anything out of it. You know, we did exactly what we're supposed to.
Just a question I have, Brad, when we do this weed cutting, wherever we do it, is it complaint driven or is it something where we go around and then look at these lots and, or what?
And the county also has a weed inspector. Some of these are driven by the county as they drive around, but we have our own weed inspectors. We go out there, numerous toxic weeds we have to take care of. We treat our city property and or private property within the city limits. Usually the longer grass and the developments, any weeds are neighbor driven. If they're full weeds, we are monitoring that ourselves. The lawn grass, garbage, that type of things comes from the neighborhood.
Anybody else have?
Yeah.
Jill?
Brad, of all the empty lots in the city, how many of them do you have to send letters to and deal with?
We deal with most of the contractors. And Paul, like you said, since I've been here, we deal with them every year. We talk about it.
But do you deal with every contractor every year?
No.
So Paul is a contractor that we have to remind every year, is that what you're telling me?
Well, we're in touch with them every year. Since I've been here,
I guess that's kind of odd to me, because I think if you know the rule, you just take care of it and we never have to deal with it. I mean, we're not looking for trouble here.
I guess I'm a little unclear on that statement there when you say, we know what the rules are, and I thought we did. We were on the paper. Right?
Okay, other questions for Paul from the council? Anything else you want to add, Paul? Okay, appreciate it. Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak to the issue of the proposed assessments for weed cutting on Mr. Renner's properties? Okay, with that, I'll close that public hearing and I'll put it out to the council for a motion or for discussion prior to a motion.
Sure, Your Honor, I'll make a motion right away. I want to make a motion to actually follow through and adopt the resolution as modified here with the different varying, with the different amounts.
The numbers that
Yeah, the 169.79 for Timber Creek and the 463.43 for Stony Brook.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded, as Dan just put on the table. Discussion on the motion. David?
This is just something each year that has been taken care of, however.
Yeah, I believe
Well,
you have to pay assessment before that. That was the first time.
That's why, like I say, I'm just a little bit lost here.
Okay. Further discussion?
You know, I guess the reason I'm making this motion is, you know, the city followed through with the proper forms with what we were supposed to do, what our staff was supposed to do in notifying Mr. Renner of the problem. And then, you know, there's an acknowledgement that there was some miscommunication potentially here. It certainly could have gone the other way too, where there was notification that this problem was taken care of, but there was no evidence of that. I think, you know, that miscommunication is acknowledged here in reducing the initial amount. You know, with the Timber Creek addition, again, the weeds were there. People in the city are responsible for mowing their boulevards. That I don't know why anybody would be exempt from that. That's the ordinance. So that's why I'm making the motion. I think we should follow through with this.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion is carried. If there is something, Brad, that you think we ought to do with that notification that could possibly avert something in the future.
On that, the weed notice, that's state county form that we use, I'll make sure that we have a notification. Like I said, communication is a two-way street, that's why we try to turn that with Paul, and I guess we weren't aware of that experience.
Is there anyone else in the audience that has an interest in any of the additional public hearings that are printed on the agenda? Because if there's not, then I'd like to adjust the agenda to accommodate the schedule that Sheriff Shannon and the rest of the individuals here from the Becker County Sheriff's Department apparently have to get to another meeting. So without objection, I'd like to call on Becker County Sheriff Kelly Shannon, and Kelly's going to introduce the other individuals that are here with him this evening. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, Council. We had some questions. We've been real busy over there, and there's a lot of things changing in the Sheriff's Department as far as our radio system and our jail. And some questions came up as far as transports and that, some concerns about our transport issues and that with other departments. So I'll have Sergeant Richards come up and explain the radio thing, but I guess I'd like to explain our transport issues that we're having with the jail. You've heard that we've thought of putting, combining with Hubbard County with a jail or building a jail here. There's several different issues that our board is looking at. But the concern that I think was brought up was the transports with other agencies, including Detroit Lakes, Frazee, Callaway, all of these. By statute, the Sheriff's Office is responsible for all transports. So no matter where the jail is located, if it's in another county or we have to transport them to other agency, other departments, other counties and things like that, the Sheriff's Office is responsible for that. So the city of Detroit Lakes, the Frazee or anything, isn't going to have to do any transports for any inmates other than when they make an arrest and bring them to the holding cell. So that's their responsibility from the time where they're arrested to the jail. As soon as they get into the jail, it's our responsibility, and we do all the transports from that point forward. So I hope that answers some questions that happen. Yes.
Just to clarify a little bit more, so there would always be a holding cell or a temporary holding facility in Detroit Lakes? Even
That's
if
correct.
They were, okay.
It would have to be. If we would combine, say, with Hubbard County, that's been brought up a lot. There's going to be a holding cell here because we would have to bring inmates back, hold them there. Booking would have to be here. So there's still going to be a base station, if you want to call it, in Detroit Lakes at the county, at the courthouse.
Sheriff, so when the transport is made though, is that going to be Becker County's cost, or do the cities have to share in that cost?
Becker County's cost.
Okay.
Yep. The only cost you have is, like it's always been, where you make an arrest, you bring him to the jail, and it's our problem from that point on. So.
Further questions for Sheriff Shannon?
I know, Sheriff Shannon, that you're working with the state as far as working out for new jail facilities. Do you feel that those new facilities will be within Becker County? Is that what your hopes kind of are?
My personal opinion and my hope is yes, that the jail will be located in Becker County. In January, the Department of Corrections is coming up to have a meeting with the Board of Commissioners, and there's going to be a lot of things discussed at that meeting as far as rules from the Department of Corrections that the county is going to have to abide by, and how the permits and that are going to be issued. So there's going to be a lot of information that I think the board is not aware of that the Department of Corrections will bring forward, and then they'll have to make some pretty tough decisions after that. So the perfect scenario is if it's built here in Detroit Lakes.
Okay, further questions?
I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee here currently and next year. I know that there was at least one meeting that was held where some of these issues were discussed and we weren't invited, and I was just wanting to make sure that we get on that invitation list down the road so that we can be part of these discussions. I'd really appreciate it.
Okay, well, I apologize that you weren't invited, but it definitely should be, yes.
Thank you.
Anything else? So you're going to have, is it Sergeant Richards?
Sergeant Richards, soon to be Chief Deputy Richards, will come in and explain the armor radio system.
Who's the other guy back there in the brown
That's
shirt?
the new elected sheriff.
Introduce him.
Are you coming back up, Sheriff, after these gentlemen talk?
I certainly can.
Well, I think, Mayor, we just personally, and as a council, I think we need to thank you, Sheriff, for your service here the last couple of years, for stepping in and what you've done for the county. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been, I've enjoyed it a lot, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And the other guy back there is our newly elected Sheriff, Todd Lander. So.
You can't hide back there, Todd. Yeah.
So Sergeant Richards, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm hoping I brought enough here. I don't know, I'm going to try to get one or two out into the audience here, but I brought some paperwork to look at. I'm going to go to the front of the paperwork. Yeah, what have we got here? Okay. Sorry, I didn't know how many copies I need, and obviously I didn't bring enough for everyone.
Not enough.
Oh, good, I don't have to share.
Okay, I think we're set.
Okay. Well, from what I understand, this request came for me to come in and kind of talk about our migration towards the armor system, some of why those decisions were made, and kind of what the capabilities of the system are. And please interrupt me at any point to ask any questions that you feel necessary. I'm happy to have you guys jump in anywhere to clarify some things. Specifically, I'm going to start with just the front page. The front page is a map of the state of Minnesota. What that is that's a participation map of all the members that are currently on the armor system. As you can see, I believe it's 76 out of 87 counties are currently on the armor system. What the armor system is, it's a radio system that's a statewide radio system built out by MnDOT. It's allowed for any public safety agency as well as any government agency. So schools, highway departments, street departments, fire, law, EMS, anybody can use a system that's either a government or public safety entity. The armor system started back in, I think, around 2000. It was started as a metro radio system. The system initially wasn't intended to be statewide. It was kind of built out through a core between St. Cloud, the metro area, and down through the Rochester area. So there was kind of some talk about this armor system, but it never really materialized because of the fact that Greater Minnesota it didn't sound like they would have access to the system unless they wanted to build their own infrastructure to enhance that armor system. The build out as it's occurred now is basically pushed out to the northwest corner of the state. We are the last region. If you notice, we're in the northwest region. There's 14 counties in that northwest region. We're in the last region to get built out. As you can see, every other region has been built out, and the green shaded counties are ones that are intending to migrate to armor. Yellow ones are on armor. The blue ones have declared that they are going to stay with their existing VHF radio systems. So they're going to be on a separate radio system. There was a lot of talk about, initially, there was talk to go and build our own VHF digital radio system. The second page is a study that was done by Federal Engineering. That study was completed and presented November 19th of 2009. Understand I wasn't the radio person back then, but there's some documents that I've been able to look at. It looks like that data gathering and collection began somewhere between 2007 and 2008 was where Federal Engineering and some of the local law enforcement, fire, and EMS provided data to Federal Engineering to decide which direction we should go for a radio system. That study was completed in November 2009. Federal Engineering told us that it was a cheaper option to go with our own VHF radio system. That information has now become old data. If you look to the next page shows where the armor system was when that study was completed. On-air sites for the armor system in 2009 of April, you can see there's one radio tower site in the whole northwest region. As well as to the south of us, Otter Tail didn't have any, Wilkin. Besides that Detroit Lake site because of MnDOT being there was no other armor tower sites. In order to become part of the armor system, we would have had to build our own radio towers with microwave links. It would have been grossly expensive, which is part of the decision that was made to build our own VHF radio system. Around that time, MnDOT, this system has been paid through 911 fees. Those small charges that you see on the bottom of your phone bill every month is what pays for this armor system. They started to realize that they were accumulating money faster than they had originally anticipated, and started to realize that they kind of became their goal and their dream to be able to build out this system statewide and incorporate all public safety into this system that would allow any public safety, law, fire, EMS to be able to communicate with each other statewide. As you can see in 2010, the next page, a lot of those sites begin to develop and pop up on the air. In Becker County, you can see that we had now 3 sites on the air in our county, and within the region, probably close to half of those sites were built. So this armor system started to become a reality. The reason that I wasn't part of this decision back then, but armor was never taken a second look at as the way that we probably should have been going. I don't have a map for 2011, but if you skip ahead 3 pages, I'm sorry. Yes, 3 pages, you'll see a map of the state of Minnesota with a bunch of green dots. That is as of December 2014. All of those green dots are on-air armor radio tower sites. There's roughly 311 tower sites in the state of Minnesota that are on air. There's only 324 tower sites that are intended to be built. The ones that are still hung up in some of the red tape, shall we say, is up in the Arrowhead of Minnesota, up in the Boundary Waters Canoe area. That is, I believe it's a national park that they have a lot of restrictions and regulations on building towers because of the BWCA. The other area of concern is the Red Lake Tribal Nation. It sounds like there's been some advances there, and it sounds like those 3 sites over in the Beltrami and in Clearwater County are going to be on hopefully within a year. So a lot of these tower sites, we're looking at being close to 100% build out here within a short time. If you look ahead one more page, specifically in our area, the sites that affect us, there's a map of Becker County there. All of our tower sites in this area are built. This system provides fantastic coverage in Becker County. Better than anything that we were looking at building. The original build-out plan for our VHF system was 6 radio tower sites within Becker County. The benefit of the armor system is you see that we've got 6 tower sites within the county, but there's also 6 tower sites outside of the county that provide coverage within our county. So we've actually got 12 tower sites to enhance coverage within this county. The cost of building that ourselves, like I said, would have been grossly expensive, but MnDOT has done that for us and built us out that system. The only thing that MnDOT requires is that you buy subscribers or radios to be able to affiliate to the system. If I could go back, I'm sorry I have these a little bit out of disorder. I've got 3 bar graphs that were provided by MnDOT. If you see the snapshot of progress, number 1, it shows the build out. In 2010, there were 164 radio tower sites on the air. You can see 2011, 216, 2012, 258, 2013, 305. The number that MnDOT is achieving or striving for is 324. You can see in 2014, there's 311. When the decision was made to not build out this system, it was because it wasn't a reality and this system couldn't be here. It could have been here, but we would have had to build it ourselves. MnDOT has taken that and done that for us, like I said. The next couple pages give percentages. 2010, roughly 50% of the tower sites in the state of Minnesota were built. Specifically up here, we were the one that drug down that percentage because we had 1 tower site in 14 counties. The snapshot of progress number 2 on the 3rd page is the number of users that are on the system. As the system has gotten bigger, everybody's began to jump on board. One of the things that this system does and why we made the decision to go with this armor system is the system that we built was really building us onto an island. We were not able to communicate with a lot of the partners throughout the state. One of the things that this system does is it gives you the ability to tap into statewide resources. The system that we were building did not accurately or did not prepare us for a major event. Obviously, we've got a Burlington Northern Railway coming through this city. We've got a tornado that could happen, Lord knows when. 747 could fall out of the sky and crash into the Detroit Lakes High School. In public safety, we never know when those real bad things that everybody thinks is the worst case scenario can happen. This system gives us the ability to tap into resources statewide. If a train derailed with Bakken crude, we may not have enough fire departments in this county to deal with that. If we've got a hazmat spill, and nothing against any of the fire departments we've got, they do a fantastic job. Just the amount of resources that would be needed for that could be huge. Hazmat, we don't have a hazmat team here. We don't have a SWAT team here. We don't have a bomb squad here. A lot of these other agencies that we rely on to provide some of those services, they are on Armor system. They aren't on our radio system. To come here and begin working, we need communications with those resources. This Armor system ties everybody onto one radio system that we can bring in a SWAT team from Wadena or Otter Tail. We can bring in bomb sniffing dogs from the cities. We can bring in hazmat teams from all over the state and begin communicating with them on a statewide level at the click of a switch. We did not have that with the other radio system that we were looking at. The last page that I'm going to have you look at is the build out of the Armor system. Those 911 fees that I was talking about that built out this system, the state of Minnesota has raised and spent $295 million on this radio system. MnDOT has raised those funds and spent that money to build out a fantastic radio system, and we were not going to use that system. It became real clear when we started looking at this that we had made the wrong decision, and for the public safety of everybody in Becker County, this was the system to go with. There's been some talk about, unfortunately there was some decision making made through our agency in years past that kind of drove us down a path, in my opinion, we shouldn't have gone down. I wasn't a member of any of the radio decisions at that point, but when we took this over, it became real clear that we'd made the wrong decision. And at the point where we looked at switching, there was some cost savings that at the sheriff's office level that we could do, and we chose to go with this Armor system. The first radio meeting that I went to of the Northwest Radio region, it became real clear through all 14 counties that everybody said, we're all going Armor someday anyways. Every one of the counties is going to be there. And I kind of said to myself, why are we going to keep spending money on a radio system, knowing full well that we're going to have to buy a new radio system in a couple of years? So that kind of made the decision easy on our part of which radio system to go with. If you'd like to, I can talk about some of the capabilities of the system. It gets into some of the technical stuff if you'd like. But I guess at this point, I guess I'd like to open it up, and hopefully that answers some of the questions that I was brought in here to answer.
Questions for
Yes.
Sergeant?
One discussion that came up at that county meeting we had is that it's not only with the radios, but also talking about computers and e-files and so forth in your office to communicate with other police departments and sheriff's offices across the state. Are you in that process of using different filing systems at the sheriff's department right now to be on board with that, or?
I think you're talking about our in-house records management system.
Yes.
There's some talk about that. We've got some issues with the current system that we are using. I think that's maybe one of the next goals, and I think I would kind of defer that to our next sheriff. Those are going to be decisions he's going to make. We know we've got some issues, and it's something that we're looking at. There's no decisions that have been made as of this point on that yet.
Further questions for the sergeant?
Is that something that's going to go forward that kind of goes hand in hand with the Armor system as far as communications?
The in-house system that we're looking at is more of a records management, how we keep our files, some of the things that we can do from our mobile computers. The communications is more is strictly communications. The two don't tie into each other at all.
Somebody else have, Jill?
I appreciate your comments and chronological list. I think that's important. And I understand you weren't there, but when was the old system put in? The system we're tearing out now, when was it? There was a decision made based on 2009 data. When was it actually installed?
The old system, that system was actually never installed. We were real close to installing that system, and that equipment hadn't been hooked up yet. And that was some of the funding that was coming from the county that was going to pay for that system. We applied that money towards some of the build out that we've got now of the Armor system.
But in the past several years, and Chief Hageron, correct me, we've spent a fair bit of money on new radios. What year was that?
2012. January 1st of 2012, the federal guidelines required us to narrow band. That's when we, so it was
it was before that deadline that we had to comply with.
And I appreciate you weren't here, but if you look at this thing in 2010, your chart, there's at least 5, looks like stars in and around Becker County. So, I mean,
Yep.
my point in here is that, you know, I'm the umpire here. I mean, imagine the umpire made the call, it's done. But going forward, this is a perfect example of where a decision made in isolation has cost the city a lot of money. And I appreciate that the county had almost a zero levy again, but, you know, we had a $80,000 expense, and that's not cheap. And so, you know, when the citizens out there know that stuff, I mean, we need to be talking, and we need to be talking and making good decisions. And that didn't happen, you weren't a part of it, but it's over and done. Things happen, but for the future, I guess communication is going to be more key.
I agree, and that was talked about, you know, knowing, when we made the decision to switch directions on our radio system, we had that conversation and knowing full well that there was some purchases made on your guys' end that was unfortunate. And we talked at length that, you know, we understood that you guys had just purchased those radios and we were choosing to go a different way. And it was a matter of this hole was getting dug deeper and deeper, and it was the wrong hole to be digging, and we weren't going to continue to dig that deeper on our end. And just timing was extremely unfortunate, you know. One of the issues that we also looked at is, you know, aside from the law enforcement radios that you would have purchased were good. They're looking at doing another narrowbanding mandate. To get into the real technical stuff, we went from 25 kilohertz down to 12.5. The FCC is talking about doing another narrowbanding mandate, going down to 6.25. They haven't set a date for that yet, but you know, there's some talk 2018 that might occur. It could be a little after that. All the fire departments applied for some radios on a grant a number of years ago. Those radios were purchased at a time that they were not capable of quarter banding. They would not have been capable of 6.25 kilohertz. So there would have been a purchase on the fire department side all over again for every fire department. Those law enforcement radios that you purchased were new enough that they would have qualified under that narrowbanding mandate. So there was a lot more to this decision than that, but it was unfortunate that this ship got steered in that direction as long as it did, but we feel like we're going in the correct direction now.
I appreciate that, and it sounds like this is unfortunate.
Bruce?
Well, yeah, I'd second what Mr. Tucker said, and Sergeant, I think you guys made the right decision. I think that, I don't know that anybody up here would dispute that. You know, and I know that this isn't a policy issue from the Sheriff's Department, and you know, I don't have any county commissioners here, but I go to meetings where I hear county commissioners talk about they don't like to be mandated by the state, and really they got a mandate to us as a city and all the other cities and fire departments in the county. So I guess our argument was, that's fine, you guys made the right decision, the mandate was there, but now can you help us pay for it? That's where I think the real heartbreak is from the city standpoint. And I know that's not your forte, and you guys need to make the right decision. I think that's the message we want to get off to the county commissioners as well, is, you know, if you're going to mandate something to us, then you need to help us with it too.
Yep. And, you know, some of you were present at the last meeting, and I think there is a spirit for that. One of the things that they're waiting on is there's the fire departments have applied what's called an AFG grant. It's a FEMA grant by the federal government, and we're hoping that comes through, which is going to help out in some of the money woes that not just you, but you know, a lot of, you know, Lake Park, Audubon, Frazee. There's Elbow, Tullabee, Carsonville. There's some unincorporated cities that are in this ball of wax with us too, and is really going to help out some money strains there. So I think the spirit is to wait and see how that grant comes through, and hopefully that's going to address a lot of the issues that have been created. And if it doesn't, then that's where they get paid the big bucks to make those decisions. So we'll see what they do after that.
So I've got a question, Sergeant. So, yes. And this might be a question that's equally applicable to our own city staff. As a city, we're all geared up and ready to hook into this system, and we got the right radios, and we budgeted the money, or is there something we need to be talking about further internally with the city?
The city needs to purchase at least 14 more radios for the fire department. We have purchased the radios for the police department. The county board approved the purchase of, I believe, 14 radios.
10.
Scott?
Well,
10 radios, and we had about 4 that would work, so we need 14 more. so that each of our firefighters have radio capability. That's an NFPA standard. And so that's kind of our challenge right now.
So is this system up and running where we're on it now, or is there a date
We
go
actually
on
just talked about that today. We're looking at a cutover date of probably Monday. We are in the process, Detroit Lakes Police has got their portables program tonight. We're doing that. Their car radios, I believe, are gonna happen tomorrow. And so we're kind of right in that transition time this next week, so.
Okay.
Well, with 76 of 87 counties in Minnesota being on the armor program, this should be a system that we'll have hopefully for many years to come, isn't it?
One of the things that, with this AFG grant, I contacted the Region 5, one of the Region 5 specialists, I guess you call them, through FEMA, and we had a frank conversation about this AFG grant that the fire departments are going through. And he said, you know what, one of the things that the rest of the United States is looking at is the way that Minnesota is taking charge of this radio system. And there's also a governance structure to this system, that it becomes our system. It is not MnDOT's system. They maintain it. It is not a state patrol system. It is not a Becker County system. It is not a DLPD system. It's our system, as in the state of Minnesota. And with that governance structure, we've got people at different levels within the governance structure of that we can kind of curtail it to what we do here. He said that the rest of the United States is really looking at what Minnesota is doing with this system, and he said, you guys are really a leader in the United States for what you're doing for public safety. We are good to go for many years to come.
I got one more question.
Yes?
Is that a bulletproof vest you're
It is.
wearing? I just wanted to know. It looks good.
It is. Don't come to work without it.
All right. Anything else? Because we have a budget thing we have to convene at 6:01, and I know there's a couple other people here that, so anything else for Sergeant, or?
Thanks for the explanation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
Appreciate it.
coming.
And if you guys want any of these links, I'm happy to provide them. The MnDOT, Department of Public Safety's got some great information on armor. Please reach out to me and I'd be happy to forward on any information that you
I would hope that whenever you have updates, that you would inform the city council of that. It's very, very good meeting tonight. Tell us about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think if we make sure that Marty gets notified, or Bob, so we can have some.
I think I've got Bob on my email list.
Yes.
So I try to forward out everything into a radio group, so.
Very good. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I don't think there's anyone else here for any of the public hearings, so without objection, or do we have to do these public hearings first, or not?
No, we have to do the budget here.
But can I jump to something else?
Yes.
Okay, without objection, I'd like to move to agenda item 5B, and I would turn it over to the Community Development Chair, Madeline Sue.
5B is consideration to amending section 24 of the zoning ordinance relative to the definitions, limitation, and duration of static display duration for electronic changeable copy or graphic display signs. For all of you that may have gotten lost in all that verbiage, we're talking about the big sign that's out by Walmart that is an electronic sign that switches quite frequently. And I'll call on Larry just to kind of fill us all in.
The changes that we're making to section 24, relating to signs, generally involve some minor modifications to clarify the definitions that were in the ordinance and also to correct some typographical errors. The one significant change that we're being asked to look at is changing our 15-minute static hold time on electronic billboards to a 7-second hold time, which is how the sign is currently being operated. And the Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter and recommends the amended ordinance, including the 7-second static hold duration for an electronic billboard.
The Planning Commission spent quite a bit of time on this. The company that owns the sign, Sky Digital, was there with their spokesperson. The previous committee that worked on the sign ordinance was represented, and there was quite a lengthy discussion, and it kind of boiled down to the fact that 7 seconds the actual safety factor for signs to change is between 6 and 10 seconds. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right. Between 6 and 10 seconds, and that 7 seconds seemed a logical change time. And I'll call on anybody in the audience that would like to speak, and I think Sky Digital probably is here and would like to address the council.
Would you just please introduce yourself, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Joel Fremstad, and I'm here on behalf of Sky Digital, and I have also one of the owners and other representatives. I really want to thank Larry and the Planning Commission and the other members. I feel like we support all of the overall package of changes that have been proposed by Mr. Remen. Some of them, of course, do relate to us. Ultimately, again, I want to keep it brief, but with digital signs like this, most communities, many communities appreciate that they look better than big giant billboards. You're able to maintain them better. It works better for the local companies that you're advertising on. But when they come at a cost of $250,000 or more for a sign, it doesn't become feasible to have a sign that only changes every 15 minutes. So most of the signs that you'll see locating throughout the country do run, as the chair mentioned, between a 6 and a 10 second rotation. Sky Digital generally uses a 7-second rotation. It's longer than would be required by the state of Minnesota, but it also allows you then to run 8 ads per minute, each which has a 7-second duration, and then switch. So it works good for the companies that are advertising, and that company might have a number of different ads that run through the slots. So there's tremendous opportunities there. So ultimately, again, I think lots of information has been supplied, but nearly every state is between 4 and 10 seconds. Most cities are also similar. And some cities that have decided to do different things, and even back when Detroit Lakes had done some looking, those are situations that we do believe are very different. So ultimately, if people have specific questions about safety, the Federal Highway Transportation Department has looked at this and has found that digital signs basically are looked at for about the same amount of time as a standard billboard, and that there's no significant safety factors. We've also, of course, been in contact with the city police as we've had an opportunity to kind of run this through the testing. A couple of the other things that I think are also very unique about signs like this. One is we have the ability and have done this on different signs depending on where we're at. And frankly, most all digital sign companies would do this. We have the ability to run Amber Alerts, run emergency notices, those kinds of things that are going to be good for the community. We also are working on and like to do basically what we would call a PSA program. And I gave Mr. Imholt copies, and I think he's circulated around. But again, we have the opportunity to work with local charitable organizations and promote some of their material. So what we're looking at doing is being able to actually run about 250,000 free ads for charitable organizations that might be having a benefit or something like that. And again, it's the kind of thing that if we have a 15-minute dwell time, doesn't become practical. So with that, if there are specific questions, whether it be safety concerns or whatever, I'd be happy to answer it. But we would ask that you support changing that dwell time to 7 seconds.
Are there questions for Joel? Questions? Do you want to get a motion on the table, and then we can open up? Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, just, the comment is, I appreciate what Mr. Frum said. These guys stepped up, Sky Digital, one of the owners, Dana's here. Providing these PSAs, I think, is a great thing for our community, and I want to thank them for providing that. It's not in the ordinance, they're not required to do it, but they volunteered, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel.
If there are no other questions, the Community Development Committee moves to change our ordinance to only require a 7-second hold time, and the other changes that have been mentioned.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded to give first reading to an ordinance amending section 24 of our zoning ordinance regarding the regulation controlling the use of signs in the city. And is there further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried, and first reading is given, and we'll have the second reading and final adoption of the ordinance amendment at our next council meeting in January. So thank you so much for coming, gentlemen. We appreciate it. We appreciate the PSA.
We'll look forward to working with, various members of the council, and obviously, we're also kind of working with the chamber to help funnel some requests. And you'll see that we did put an email in there so that, I'm sure that this is on TV, and we'll probably make a newspaper too. So, we'll be trying to work with folks as things happen.
Very good, thank you. Without objection of the council, I would like to continue with the Community Development Committee and move to item 5D.
That is consideration to the amendment of a conditional use permit for a homeless shelter to serve a different clientele at 811 8th Street Southeast. This is what has been known as Compassion House, and last year they came and we gave them a conditional use permit for originally 59 men, because at that time they felt that it would be best served to use it to serve homeless men. And at this time, I'm going to ask Lynette to come up, Lynette Price from Compassion House, and she can fill us in a little bit on the change that they're requesting.
Thank you so much for having me. The decision was made in September. In early September, we started the discussion, so the board did, of the refuge, to say how can we best utilize the property and the investment that was there to help with the homeless situation. And we had been getting, for some time, many calls coming in for women, and especially women with children. And also realizing we have the crisis center here in town that does a really good job in what they do. But there was this gap in what we were serving with, especially children. And that was that the crisis center, of course, deals with rape and abuse and immediate crisis need. But this, at Compassion House, we really looked at the need for just mothers and women with children and that were homeless and did not have rape, abuse, those kind of situations going on. The crisis center, they've got professional counselors and legal people who work with a lot of those issues and do a good job dealing with that. We will be looking at taking a look at, right now, at this time, women with mostly children. There could be some single women as well. We have had applications coming in. It really does, as we reviewed some of them, it does bring you to tears. When you really just see what's going on in the community, it is amazing. We've spent a lot of time connecting and communicating with Mojave Ottawa, the schools, the community health, Young Lives, and all of those groups too that are very supportive in the fact that there is a need out there that really needs to be met for especially the needs of children.
Questions for Lynette from the council?
This conditional use, the Community Development Committee has reviewed and moves to change the conditional use permit for Compassion House to now house 40 individuals. And we're not going to put wording in there to designate whether it's women, children, or men, because as we've seen, time has changed, and perhaps one day that time will change again. So this time we are making the motion to change the conditional use permit to 40 individuals.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded to issue a conditional use permit to the Refuge/Compassion House to allow a homeless shelter at 811 8th Street Southeast. And as Madeline explained, it's the change in the wording to reflect that it can be used to house up to 40 homeless individuals, correct? Okay, discussion on the motion?
This takes effect immediately then?
It will take effect immediately. We are taking applications, and we do have the applications already coming in at this time, waiting.
You mean the permit, Ron?
No, as far as
okay.
when they open up, yes.
Okay. Marty?
I just want to, just a quick comment about what a valuable service it's been over the past few years. It's not a flop house, it's not a place for people to just go and stay. You have a very valuable service in trying to get these people back on their feet and get them integrated back into the workplace and into the community, and thank you.
Thank you, and only that comes with the efforts of this community and working together. Certainly, that is a collaborative effort that makes that difference.
Further comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. Thank you again, Lynn. Appreciate it. Do we have to have the budget meeting right at 6:01, or can it be as long as it's after 6:01?
After 6:01, I believe, is the technical requirement.
Okay, without objection then, I would like to move to agenda item number 9A, having to do with, that would be on our Liquor and Gambling Control Committee, and I would turn it over to our chairman, Brevin.
We have before us this evening one request for a liquor and wine license subdivision. And Charlie, could you give us the legal things about this?
Sure. In front of you, you have, I hope, a proposed change to Chapter 702, the liquor and wine licensing ordinance that the city has. It should have option 1 written on the top of it. The proposed change was, I think, suggested by a particular business owner here in Detroit Lakes who would like to, is considering opening what we would euphemistically call a brew pub. And in order to do that, in addition to obtaining a whole variety of federal and state licenses, state law requires that there be city ordinances in place that would also license the actual sale of the product produced at this facility. And so the proposal is to amend our ordinances to allow for a licensing of a brewery tap room, a brew pub on sale, and a brew pub off sale. And essentially what that really means is this. In the context of the brew pub, it means that we would be amending the ordinances to allow someone to apply, someone who had already obtained the state manufacturing license. In other words, it's not just anybody who can get this license. They have to already have a state manufacturer's license in order to produce this malt liquor. But once they obtain their state license, in the brew pub context, in conjunction with a restaurant, in other words, a food service facility, we would be licensing them to sell their product on sale, as well as licensing in a separate license their product off sale. Both of them are for small breweries. In other words, there's maximum limit on the quantity that they can produce. There is some limits imposed by the state statutes on who can own them. Essentially, it's characterized so that it's a small business operation. There's also limits on the quantity of malt liquor that they can sell off sale. The maximum would be 500 barrels per year. In that brew pub context, the state statute allows them to hold other liquor licenses. So, for instance, the restaurant that has an existing liquor license would obtain the on-sale and off-sale brew pub licenses as an additional license. In other words, an additional separate license. It would not allow them to sell as a wholesale. In addition to those, the brew pub on-sale and the brew pub off-sale, we've also included a proposed change to the ordinance which would facilitate the microbrewery context, if you want to put it that way. We don't have a specific request from anybody to do this, but in looking through the state laws, it seemed to make sense to give this, put this out there as an opportunity. The microbrewery context is called a brewery tap room. Again, the quantity of the malt liquor that can be produced each year, limited by state statute to relatively small quantities, 3,500 barrels a year. And in that context, it does not require the connection to a restaurant. In other words, someone who wanted to set up a microbrewery could assuming they comply with our zoning ordinance, set up a manufacturing facility, obtain a state license to do that. If they obtain that license, the state license, then we would be able to license them to be able to sell their product on site, the brewery tap room, and also be able to sell that product off sale in limited quantities, again, the same 500 barrels a year. And essentially what that is I view it as sort of an economic development thing. If somebody wanted to set up a microbrewery, couldn't get a wholesaler to carry their product yet, they would be able to sell on-site and a little bit of off-sale in order to be able to build a brand, because that license does eventually allow them to sell to a wholesaler. But the converse to that is they cannot hold any other liquor licenses. Okay. Now, if I haven't made that confusing, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
With that, I move we amend Chapter 702, Liquor and Wine Licensing, Section 702.02, Subdivision 1, as outlined by Charlie.
And which, just for clarification, Alan or Charlie, are we doing option 1 or option 2?
That was option 1.
Option 1, the only difference between option 1 and option 2 is that option 1 includes the brewery tap room option. Option 2 did not include the brewery tap room option.
So Alan, you're making the motion for option 1.
Option 1.
Which would include the brewery tap room as well as the brew pub.
Charlie, when I visit the Tucker household, the tap room up there, is that going to be under this ordinance or outside it?
Well, it'd be difficult to say. If the Tucker household wants to get a state manufacturing license, then we'll have to see whether it complies with the zoning ordinance.
It's all good, some just a little better than others.
Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. Chet, good luck. I think it's going to be a neat thing for the town, and so have fun with all your paperwork.
Oh, yeah, I just want to thank all of you guys. There's a few people that have been involved with this that have done a lot of legwork that don't get a lot of credit, and that's the city attorney's office. So thank you. It's a lot of work. We're really excited about it, so thank you guys for your support for now. And let the brewing begin.
I got a real discriminating palate, I'll sign up.
Dan, did you have something you had on the agenda, or?
I don't think so. I just have a personal tax issue. I guess I'll come talk with Dan and Larry again about
Okay.
property taxes.
Okay. I'm assuming it's 6:01 or later, so at this time, we will move to the Finance Committee agenda, and I'll turn it over to Chairman Ron Zeman.
Okay, we'll get my papers lined up here for this. I'm going to call on our finance director, Pam Slifka, to give us an overview to start with tonight, and Pam's getting her information going there. So Pam, right now, I'll just turn it over to you then.
Thanks. My name is Pam Slifka, and I'm the finance officer for the city. State law requires us every year before we adopt our annual budget and tax levy to do a truth in taxation meeting for the benefit of all of our citizens so that they can understand somewhat what we do to go through the budget and how we arrive at the tax levy. Please. So I have a slide presentation to show you, and the first slide compares our 2015 proposed tax levy with our actual 2014 tax levy. The first column over here is the proposed 2015 levy. This is the tax levy for 2014, the actual tax levy, and this shows the increase or decrease year over year. So our general fund is increasing from 2014 to 15 by $137,000. Our library fund is increasing by 20, the airport by 12,000, the equipment and building fund by 36,000, and then our debt service funds, each individual debt service fund is increasing or decreasing Those total up a $25,000 increase year over year. Those debt service funds are what we pay our bonds with for the construction projects that we do around town. And then we have a fire hall building debt service fund. Our fire hall is scheduled to be paid off in the year of 2020, but we're increasing that levy by $3,000 to make sure that the funds are available to take care of paying that off when the time comes. So overall, our tax levy last year was $3,926,000. This year, we're proposing to increase that to $4,160,000, which is a $233,000 increase. That increase is about 5.95% from here to here. $205,000 of that is directly related to operating expenses. $28,000 is related to debt service expenses. And so the total of those two is 5.95%. Okay, so what makes up the increases? First of all, we've got good news. Our health insurance costs, our premiums did not go up this year. So that was great news. Our health insurance costs are flat. We have no increase built into the budget to take care of health insurance costs. We have an increase in wages and associated payroll taxes that amounts to about $52,000. The city council chose to convert a part-time police officer to full-time. If you recall, several years ago, we dropped a position in the police department due to budget cuts, and they felt that this was the appropriate time to restore a part-time officer to full-time, and that's at a cost of about $60,000. The city has been growing over the last many years. Through annexations, we've added more streets, we've added more parks, we've added more trails. All of those things require more time and more effort, more equipment usage in our street and park department. So they need a little bit more money to help with all the added maintenance that results from those annexations and building projects. So we added, that's adding about $10,000 to our budget. The state of Minnesota mandates that certain requirements be met for handling stormwater and MS4 compliance. Those mandates are getting stricter and stricter as the years move by, and we're going to have to start doing more tracking, training, improvements to our systems to comply with what the state requires. That will cost about $32,000 this year. And as you heard earlier, there's new police and fire radios that have to be purchased. Also, our library needs some capital work that we continue to look at every year. Those needs have not been met through the regular budget, and the council felt it was time to set up a capital fund for the library. That capital fund for the radios in the library amounted to $50,000 this year. The council also voted to implement a GIS system for the city. That implementation is scheduled to begin in 2015. That will take care of all record keeping for our stormwater, infrastructure, electric, water, wastewater, streets, all kinds of different things. So the city allocated $65,000 increase in the budget for that. And also a facility study to take a look at our existing buildings and infrastructure and determine exactly what we need to do with what we have and what we can do going forward with what we have or what we need to do differently. Also, the city council this year took a look at our public works facility. They determined that they wanted to do something different with that facility, particularly build a different facility. We didn't have the money or the capital to do that, so we decided to start establishing a capital fund so that going forward in several years, we would have enough money to put a decent down payment against any kind of bond issue that we would issue for a new public works facility. So that increased our expenditures or our budget by $36,000 this year. So now we're going to compare our tax capacity rates. There are two drivers to what creates the number on your tax statement. Those two drivers are net tax capacity and the tax levy. So tax capacity, everything starts with taxable market value. On your tax bill, your home is assigned a taxable market value. Last year, in 2014, the taxable market value for all properties within the city limits was $801 million. In 2015, that taxable market value has gone up to $857,000, which is a 7% increase, and that's a huge increase. There's been a lot of building, a lot of capacity increase within the city, and that's beginning to show up now in our taxable market values. The state has a formula that they apply to taxable market value to come up with something called a total tax capacity. The total tax capacity of the city of Detroit Lakes last year was 9.9 million. This year, for 2015, it's expected to be 10.4 million. That's an increase of almost $500,000. When you look at tax capacity, then you have to subtract off your tax increment financing because that really doesn't come into the city coffers. So the net tax capacity for the city last year was $9,334,000. This year it's almost $9,800,000. Again, an increase of about $450,000 or 4.8%. The tax levy last year, as we discussed, was $3,926,000. This year we're proposing $4,159,000, an increase of $233,000, which is a 5.95% on the levy, increase on the levy. Okay, here's the real important part. The tax capacity rate is a factor that you get when you divide the total levy by the net tax capacity. So last year, our tax capacity rate for the city was 42.06%. This year, it's 42.52%. So even though we had a levy increase of 5.95%, the tax capacity rate only went up less than 0.5%. So the percentage increase in our tax capacity is 1.1%. And I want you to remember that number going forward because you'll see that again. Okay, and all of this information, again, I didn't make it up. It came directly from the auditor's office over at the county office.
Sure, yeah, right.
Okay, this is our government expenditures. We look at all of our expenditures on a fund-by-fund basis. Basically, the city keeps a separate accounting for almost everything we do. We have basically a separate checkbook for every entity in the city. The general fund is where we have the street department, the police department, the fire department, the admin offices, those kinds of issues. That budget is going up from 5.7 to $6 million, $317,000. The library fund is increasing $6,000. Airport fund is flat. Development authority is going down a bit. The lodging and tax fund is going up $16,000 on their expenditures, but keep in mind they're self-supporting. They can only spend what they can generate in tax. The stormwater fund is going up $32,000. Again, that's a factor of the state regulations that are being imposed on us. No change in the bond emergency fund. And then we've got the equipment fund has several different pieces to it. The fire department is going up $14,000. Street department $36,000. Park department is going down $9,000. Police department is up $5,000. No change on the sports arena. Admin department is down 5. And then we go into the food and beverage tax fund. We're expecting those expenses to go up $6,600. And our debt service fund is actually going down almost $2 million. And the reason for that is in 2014, our QZAB bond came due. That was the bond that we issued to finance the DLCCC. The bond came due in July and we paid it off. And so that debt service is included, the payoff is included in that. And that was $3.9 million that we paid off this year. So all in all, our budgeted expenses are really decreasing 11%. Okay, LGA. LGA is local government aid. The city of Detroit Lakes in 2001 received $1,600,000 a year from the state in LGA. That's money that's allocated by the state legislature back down to each city. They have a formula that they use. And so in 2001, we got $1,600,000. Fast forward to 2011. When the crunch started hitting the state started cutting LGA. In 2011, we got $550,000. They cut us over $1 million. But they've been cutting steadily since then every year. This year, the last couple of years, they've increased it. We were up to $782,000 this year. Next year, we got a whopping increase of $5,000. So we'll be up to $787,000. Move on. Okay, bear with me. There's a lot of data on this screen, but there's a lot of meat in here as well. The League of Minnesota Cities puts together some statistical data for every city in the state of Minnesota. And not only do they put it together on a city-by-city basis, but they also group cities into regions, and then they put together regional information as well. They also do metro versus non-metro statistics. So what we're going to look at here is this is based on 2013 property tax data, which is for taxes payable in 2014. And we took 10 cities in our area up here, tried to get cities that are close to the same size as we are in one way or another. The cities we're looking at are Moorhead, Fergus Falls, Brainerd, Bemidji, East Grand Forks, Crookston, Thief River Falls, Alexandria, Baxter, and the city of Detroit Lakes is over here on the end. So in 2013, our population, based on the Minnesota census, was 8,851 people. So when you're looking at population only, the two cities that we are closest to, for comparison purposes, are Thief River Falls and East Grand Forks. They each have 8,600 and some people. Okay, so Thief and East Grand. Now we're going to look at the total tax capacity. We looked at that on the screen before, but now we're going to look at it for every one of these cities. So the city of Detroit Lakes has a tax capacity of $9,334,000. If you look at the two cities that we are closest to for tax capacity, it's not East Grand Forks or Thief River Falls. It's Fergus Falls, who's got 9.4 million, and Bemidji, who has 9 million. So that's who we compare to on tax capacity, all right? And the tax rate that you pay on your tax bill is made up of a county rate, a city rate, a school rate, and special assessment district rates. The city rate for each one of these cities is here. Moorhead's 37%, Fergus is almost 50%, Brainerd is 65%. If you read them across, ours is 42%, 0.06%. I believe we are the third or fourth lowest. The average in our Region 4 area is 49.36%. So at 42%, we're 7% below what the average is for this region. Also, when you look at the total tax rate for each one of these cities, I think it's important to note that the total tax rate for Detroit Lakes, when you add all those components up, is 96%. And the closest city to us, when you add all their tax rates up, is Fergus Falls at 112%. Everybody else is over 100%. We're the only one up here that's under 100%. LGA, 2014 LGA. This is what the cities, each individual city got for LGA. Moorhead, 7 million. Fergus Falls, 3.6 million. Brainerd, 4 million. Thief River, 2.9 million. Alexandria, $1.5 million. Detroit Lakes, less than 800,000. So the two biggest sources of revenue for the city are LGA and our tax levy. So if our LGA is it's less than 800,000 and all the rest of these cities are in the millions, what does that mean? That means that we have to make up the difference in a tax levy. Just as an example, the Public Safety Department, which is fire, police, and protective inspection, in the city of Thief River Falls, their budgeted, or no, their actual expenditures for 2013 were $2.6 million. They got $2.9 million in LGA. Guess what? Their LGA paid for all their public safety expenditures, and they had $300,000 left over to spend on everything else in the community. Our public safety expenditures last year were $2.3 million. We got $800,000. That didn't even start to touch our public safety expenditures, so we had to find the other $1.5 million from other sources to support our public safety guys. Okay, so the city certified levy, Fergus Falls levies $4.2 million, Brainerd $4.4, Bemidji $4.1, East Grand, who in population is closest to us, is at about $3 million. But keep in mind that Fergus Falls and Bemidji are closest to us in tax capacity. They're levying over $4 million apiece. So last year we levied $3.9 million. So the total LGA and tax levy for each one of the cities is shown here. And we are way down on the list. Crookston was 4.7, Thief River's 4.4, and Detroit Lakes is at 4.7 as well. Where you really begin to see the difference is when you look at how much LGA do we get per capita. Fergus Falls is $268, Brainerd's $294, East Grand Forks is $290, Crookston $380, Thief $333. We're at $88 a person that we get from the state for LGA. The average of all these 10 cities is $316 per capita. We get 88. What that really means is that we have to make up that difference in some other way. So our tax levy per capita is, this shows your tax levy per capita down here for each one of the cities. Our tax levy per capita is $443. The average of the 10 cities is $212. The difference is about $220, which is about the same thing as the difference between the 88 and the 316. So The total per capita for each one of these cities between LGA and the tax levy. Fergus Falls is $585, Brainerd is $620, East Grand is $630, Thief River is $508, Alexandria is $554. We were at $432 last year. And the average, when you average them all out among the 10 cities, was $528. So we were right on average, total. But the mix is different for us. When you rank them lowest to highest, total per capita, we are the third lowest. Moorhead is the lowest with $397. Thief River is next with $508, and then it's the city of Detroit Lakes with $532. We've been third for the last 4 years, third lowest. The League of Minnesota Cities, the average city rate that they have determined for the greater Minnesota cities with populations between 5,000 and 10,000, which we are, is 61.39%. Average city rate in this region is 49. We're at 42. So we're well below the average for greater Minnesota cities with our population. Thank you. I didn't see you do that. Okay, last slide. Here's a 15-year schedule of our tax capacity and tax rate. The net tax capacity, if you look at this slide, look at the numbers here, we have grown from 4.4 million down to 9.7 million in the last 14 years. That's about 120% increase. Our tax levy has gone from $1.5 million to $4 million. Our direct tax rate, which is what you pay on your taxable market value, or tax capacity rather, went from 35% to 42%. That did not grow very much, 7%. So this is the good news slide, I call it. Last year at 42.06%, on a $100,000 home, that homeowner would have paid $302 in city taxes. This year, a $100,000 home, that homeowner will pay $305.14, which is $3.31 increase year over year. And that $3.31 goes back to a previous slide. That's the 1.1% increase that we saw. So even though the levy went up 5.95%, the actual tax impact on a property is 1.1%, and that's because of the increase in the taxable market value that the city has seen. Next, we are done. Anybody have any questions?
Somebody want to, Chief, will you hit the lights back there?
How does that determine that LGA?
The state has a formula. I haven't looked into the formula because every time I look at it, my blood pressure goes up. So Bob can probably address that better than I can.
There are a number of factors that the state takes into consideration when they allocate your LGA. Some of the things that they look at have to do with the age of housing, the miles of streets, and they take into a number of different factors that go into the operations of the city. And then they determine how much LGA you get based upon those criteria. And they do modify the criteria from time to time. Their intent is to try and equalize the delivery of services amongst all of the communities, and not necessarily equalize the tax rates. And so, because the city of Detroit Lakes, as Pam explained, has a higher taxable value than some comparable cities, then we end up having to tax more to be able to make up for the lower LGA allocation. And there's been special amounts awarded for different services over time. This program's been in place a number of years. And so those, that to really understand all that, you gotta go in and look at all of the individual items in there.
Questions for Pam?
I was going to mention that about 5 years ago, I went to a meeting for LGA money. And basically what it is that the metro area for years has had high property taxes. And so for that reason, they had an unfairness in collecting taxes that we couldn't collect here in outstate Minnesota. So they put this formula in so it would balance some of the poorer rural counties that didn't have the capacity to do the projects. So they based it from what was getting in metro area and gave some of those monies to rural area. It was all based, like Bob and Pam were saying, based on what our total property tax market values were. We're very fortunate here in Detroit Lakes the last few years. Our market value for Detroit Lakes, and you saw all those other towns, we've been growing at a sky pace. These other communities haven't, and we're very fortunate. Like this last year, we had over 50 new homes. And every time you see a new home go up, that gives us more taxable market values. And so when that happens, when our market value goes up, RGA is going to go down because we're no longer a poor county is the way the Minneapolis metro area sees that, and the state legislature sees that. So even though we're not getting the LGA money, we actually are coming off better because we've got people that want to move to our community, they want to do improvements, and they want to make Detroit Lakes a place to live and work and do business in. So we're fortunate that way that we have that. I'd rather do it this way than have my hand out and expect to get money because we're not growing and that we're in tough shape financially. So I think we're very fortunate we live in a community that is growing the way it is.
Marty?
Pam, can you speak a little to the liquor store contribution and the utilities contribution that helps to keep the taxes down?
Sure. Part of the money that the city uses to help keep our tax rate low is our city liquor store transfers about a little more than $450,000 of its profits per year back to the city coffers, back to the general fund. So we use that $450,000 for whatever we need to supplement our tax levy. Also the same thing for the electric utility. The electric utility has been contributing $475,000 to the city's general fund for a number of years, and in 2015 they have increased that transfer to $525,000. So between the liquor store and the electric utility, the city fund gets about $1 million transferred into it every year to help keep our taxes down.
Thank you.
Bob?
Just for everybody's information, the payment in lieu of taxes, which is the transfer Pam referred to from the utilities, the reason for that increase was to try and provide funding to enable us to try and hire another police officer and to cover some of the costs that we discussed earlier with the radio switchover and things like that. So most of that additional funds went directly into our public safety programs.
Okay. And I did the math before the meeting. If we didn't have those transfers, our taxes would be about 26% higher this year. So very important, good point. Further questions or comments? Pam, I thought you did a terrific job explaining all the different components. Thank you for all your work, and I want to personally thank the Budget Committee, the Finance Committee, and all the council members who spent many long hours working up the budget for 2015. So thanks to all of you. Chairman Zeman, do you have a motion?
Yes, I
several
certainly
motions.
do. Let's go to item 7B, consideration to a resolution of adopting the final 2014 tax levy, which will be collected in 2015. As Pam just mentioned, we're going to have a tax levy of $4,159,722. It's an increase of $233,510, which comes to 5.95, but with the city tax capacity rate, it actually knocks it down to less than a 4.62, which it will mean the average increase will be about a 1.10 increase overall. And like Pam did say, if you own a $100,000 home in Detroit Lakes market value, your increase will be about $3.31. And if you have a commercial business worth $250,000, the increase on that would be $19.58. So the committee recommends, and I so move that we go ahead with this year's tax levy.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution adopting the final 2014 tax levy collectible in 2015. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion's carried.
Okay, next item is C. It's a matter of approving the City of Detroit Lakes final budget for the calendar year 2015. The final budget, including the liquor budget, is $18,481,837. This is our final budget. The committee recommends, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the final 2015 budget for the City of Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, instead of moving forward, we gotta go backwards. This time I'm going to adjourn the regular council meeting and call to order a public hearing to receive public comment on granting the following on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses and Sunday on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses for 1 year beginning January 1st, 2015. I'm not going to read all those. They're on the agenda for everybody. Page 1, they're listed, unless somebody wants me to read them all. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the issue of granting these licenses for 2015? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion for approval. Motion's been made and seconded to grant on-sale intoxicating liquor licenses and Sunday on-sale liquor licenses for 2015 to the establishments listed. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. At this time, I'll call to order a public hearing to receive public comment on granting, again, a series of on and off sale malt liquor licenses for the year 2015. I won't read them unless somebody requests me to do so. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak to the issue of granting on and off sale malt liquor licenses for 2015? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion for
I so
approval.
move. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to grant on and off sale malt liquor licenses for 2015 to the establishments listed on our agenda. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is carried. At this time, I will call to order a continuation of a public hearing to give consideration of an appeal for the proposed assessment for Dutch elm disease control at 514 West Avenue. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the issue of an assessment for Dutch elm control at 514 West Avenue? I know in our packets we had a letter from Mr. Potter, who is the owner of 514 West Avenue, but Mr. Potter's not here.
Mr. Potter was not able to make the meeting. He did speak with me, indicated that there were 2 trees there. He was in the process of cutting them down and objected to the assessment for that reason. He had received multiple notices that as outlined in my letter to him, and so that's the situation. Brad can give you more details on the notices that went out if you need them.
Well, in your opinion, Bob or Brad, did we give Mr. Potter adequate notice to do this and he didn't do it in a timely manner, or is there some other mitigating factors here?
Yes, definitely not in a timely manner. There were 2 trees, and one was from 2013, and he started cutting it down, trimming the top, and then for some reason, so we did send the contractor in, he stopped, and didn't do it anymore. And then the next year, tree, and I don't know if that was stopped, but one reason we do immediate removal is to try and stop the spread of it. And the next year, this year, then another tree in his yard did have Dutch elm again. So we sent the letter, didn't hear anything from him, and proceed to follow our policy through this time.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the issue of, or did I already ask that?
You did.
Anybody in the audience want to speak to the issue? Okay. Hearing none, that public hearing is closed, and I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to adopt the assessment for Dutch elm disease control at 514 West Avenue. And that amount is $1,846.84. Is that correct? Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion is carried. At this time, I will call to order a public hearing for the purpose of receiving public comment on the vacation of a public road right-of-way at 126 Shorewood Drive. Larry, do you want to just briefly explain that
Yeah,
situation?
this is the consideration for the vacation of a road right-of-way at 126 Shorewood Drive. It's approximately 30 feet wide, and it runs through the middle of the property. It's a road right-of-way that has never been used for road purposes. No road has ever been constructed there. There are no utilities on this particular easement. We would vacate it. The property owners in turn would provide the city with a description of a road or an easement for the road right-of-way that we actually are using for road purposes in this area.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to the issue of a vacation of public road right-of-way at 126 Shorewood Drive? Hearing none, that public hearing is closed. Is there a motion for approval?
There is a motion for
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution vacating some road right-of-way at 126 Shorewood Drive, per Larry Remen's explanation. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion is carried, and I will now turn it over to the Community Development Chair, Madeline Suki.
Item A, consideration to a resolution approving the preliminary and final plat of a common interest community number 78 Brolin Beach condos at 25641 Brolin Beach Road. These are storage condos, and I'll call on Larry.
These storage condos were constructed out by the 59 Motel. Basically, what's happening now is the owner is filing a condominium plat so that he can sell off those storage units.
Okay.
Planning Commission reviewed it, and the Community Development Committee also reviewed it, and we moved to give consideration to that final plat.
Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the preliminary and final plat of a common interest community number 78 Brolin Beach condos. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Item C, consideration to the rezoning of 551 11th Avenue Southeast from R2-1 and 2 Family Residence District to a B2 General Business District to allow construction of a, correct?
Correct.
Of a year-round child care center. This is Laker Prep Preschool. The Rodders were in previously to get the rezoning for the original plat. This is a small triangular section that's adjacent. Larry?
Yes, this is a small triangular piece of property that's in between the road and where Laker Prep School is building their new school. They purchased this property from the school district, and they have asked that it be rezoned the same as the rest of the property that they own there, and the planning commission recommends approval.
The Community Development Committee and the Planning Commission also moved to grant this, or to whatever we do for the rezoning. I'm tired, I've lost my words.
Plus, I interrupted you, I'm sorry. The motion's been made and seconded to give first reading to an ordinance amending section 20 of the zoning ordinance, rezoning an area from R2 to B2 at 551 11th Avenue Southeast. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried.
This is where we're talking about all the new stuff happening in Detroit Lakes that comes right here. Item E, consideration to a conditional use permit to allow a school use at 416 Forest Street, and this was requested by the Detroit Lakes Public Schools. It is contingent upon the purchase of the property. And Larry, anything else you need to let us know?
Well, essentially, this property is adjacent to Lossman School. It's on Forest Avenue. The school district would like to acquire it, and they would use that for enlarging the playground or parking or for whatever kinds of uses that a school would need. In order to do that, they need to have a conditional use permit. The planning commission recommends approval, subject to the school district purchasing the property. They don't want anybody else to start a school there.
The CDC committee recommends granting this conditional use permit contingent upon the purchase of the land.
Motion's been made and seconded to grant a conditional use permit to allow school use at 416 Forest Street adjacent to the Rossman School property, contingent upon the purchase of the property. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion is carried.
Item F, consideration to a preliminary plat of the replat of Outlot A, Longbridge. This is 4 single lots, Longbridge Heights. This is 4 single lots, and for those of you that wonder where it is, it's that MMCDC development that's just on the other side of the road from Longbridge Resort, or Longbridge Restaurant.
It's right up by our standpipe. This is, the planning commission has recommended preliminary approval of this 4-lot plat, subject to 4 conditions. First, that they provide utility easements along each lot line, that the owner obtain a land disturbance permit from the city, that the owner construct a graded roadway with a gravel surface to the satisfaction of the city engineer from the paved surface of Bay Ridge Drive to the intersection of Shorewood Drive, and that they also grade the unimproved lots and provide some curb establishment on those lots to prevent erosion.
Planning commission reviewed, offered the options that you hear Larry talk about, and the CDC recommends that we give approval to that final plat.
Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution approving the preliminary plat of the replat of Outlot A, Longbridge Heights, subject to 4 conditions. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried. Before Madeline introduces item G, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the vice mayor because I have a direct financial conflict of interest in the next matter, so.
Item G, consideration to the final plat of Sunnyvale subdivision located in the city's 2-mile extraterritorial area on the west side of Long Lake. And I'm going to call on Larry just to outline the recommendations.
This is a 3-lot plat just north of Brackett Estates, west of Long Lake. And the planning commission recommends approval of the final plat, subject to the owner paying the required park dedication.
The Community Development Committee therefore recommends that we approve the final plat of Sunnyvale subdivision.
Okay, is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Anything else, Madeline?
I don't believe so.
Okay, we'll move to the Public Works Committee, and this evening, instead of Chairman Downey, due to his, I think, Dave, you were gone at the meeting or whatever, so we're gonna have Dan Weiner.
Dave said I could handle this if I promised to take her easy and bring her back all washed up. So. Thank you. Most of the items are informational tonight. I'm going to actually ask our city engineer to update us on Trunk Highway 1059 Home Street Extension Project, give us a brief summary, and if with your permission, move right into what's going on with Trunk Highway 34 improvements that's proposed for 2016.
This should only take a half hour. I promise it's far less complicated than beer sales and breweries.
Not near as interesting.
I agree. Moving on, update on 1059. Tom Lundberg was in just to give an update. We had to do some redesign on that project due to some soil contamination. That work's been complete. The project's been submitted to MnDOT Central Office. I would expect we will advertise the project sometime in January, receive bids in February. Over the course of the next month, I hope to work with Tom to kind of nail down our city costs for this project for utilities and roadways. They will certainly change. The good news is we should be going down because of some of the changes. So
that, by and large, it's what's happening, but the project is still on schedule for construction in the beginning of 2015. Item B, discussion on, or we had an update on Trunk Highway 34. MnDOT in 2016 will be making improvements to the Highway 34 corridor from Trunk Highway 59, rather, out to about Highland Drive. And primarily what that's going to involve is a mill and inlay sort of rehab project. There'll be some upgrades to sidewalks and ped ramps. It'll be a center turning type lane layout, similar to what's out in front of in front of M State, and that'll be carried all the way through, so we will be losing parking throughout that corridor. Along with that, council's expressed some interest to at least look at opportunities for developing trails, sidewalks, and pedestrian facilities through there. So I think we've got at least the preliminary ideas of what we'd like to impose there. Tom's going to work through some of that and get some more detail in terms of what our cost participation would be. I know our position on it is to try to get MnDOT, I think, to fund as much of that as we possibly can. So we'll work forward in that manner. One other thing that Tom did mention was, it's not programmed yet, but the intersection at East Shore / County Road 54 and Highway 10, that intersection needs warrants for a traffic signal. So that is being looked at right now. MnDOT's looking at some funding for their portion of the project. We would have 25% of that project cost roughly. We'll also be turning over some rocks and see if we can't find some funding for our portion, because that will come at an expense to the city. Right now, the timing of that is a little bit uncertain, probably maybe in the 2017 category. But we're trying to work that through with the Heartland, or the trail extension out to Detroit Mountain property and the Mountain View property. I think Larry's been making an application jointly with the county on that, correct? So that's all kind of working together, I guess. That is on those items.
You can stay standing though, but
just keep going.
With your permission, I'll go on to item C, Your Honor. This one will require action by the City Council. CP Rail is looking at doing an upgrade on actually they are going to do an upgrade at their crossing on Legion Road. Primarily they're going to install crossing arms there. So in anticipation of them also upgrading the crossing itself, John, city engineers prepared a preliminary engineering report on what street improvements and changes we'd need to coincide with that. And John, if you would just kind of cover that briefly again. Does everybody have one of these?
I thought we were not going to do that.
Our thought process was to approve the preliminary engineering report, even though the actual work is going to be a long ways down the road, since CP isn't going to actually do anything with the road itself. But since we have the report ready to go based on previous information, we're going to approve it or not.
Well, I could move for approval.
Second.
Okay, there you go. Nobody wants to hear about that anyway.
Motion's been made and seconded, and basically right now what we're gonna get is we're gonna get crossing arms to improve the safety. And we're deferring any actual work on the road until some future date.
Well, until the CP decides that they're gonna improve the road bed. But when are the crossing arms getting installed, do you think?
It's going to be late next year or possibly the early part of 2016.
So that'll even be a ways out, so, okay.
Further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried.
Item D, Your Honor, is a request from the Boys and Girls Club to waive the pavilion rental fee for the Polar Fest plunge on February 14th. The Public Works Committee discussed this. The Finance Committee had actually established a nonprofit rate for organizations nonprofit organizations that want to utilize the pavilion in order to cover at least the minimal cost of utilizing that facility. So rather than waive the fee, we're going to go with the non-profit rate. So there's the action would be here to deny the request for waiving the fee, go with the non-profit rate as established in the city budget, and that runs about 1/3 of what it would cost to, of the daily rate, or a quarter of what we would charge a for-profit organization on that. So I would move to deny the request to waive the fee.
Second it.
Motion's been made and seconded to deny the request for the Boys and Girls Club to have the cost of pavilion rental fee waived, but we will give them the nonprofit rate. And I believe Alderman Imholt had a good suggestion that perhaps they may want to talk to our liquor committee to see if there's a possibility of a donation from the liquor store that might offset some of this fee. So, further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion's carried.
Item E is the project status report from the city engineer on whatever else is going on.
Whatever else, I'll keep it brief. Washington Avenue, the one thing I did want to point out there is we had a public info meeting with all the downtown businesses last Thursday, really just to go over the proposed plans, the expanded project scope, schedule, phasing, all things that you've been discussed at length prior to this. So I think the meeting went very well. We had a lot of attendance. I would say there was 40 to 50 people there, which was good to see. I didn't perceive any significant objections or comments to what the plan is there. So at present, we're still kind of on track as we've discussed in the past. So I'm right now gunning to try to bring those plans to the January council meeting. It's going to be a push, but that is definitely the goal, so that we can be looking at bids sometime in February, the latter part of February. We very likely, because of timing, may have to look at a special meeting in the later part of February to do that, but we'll cross that when we get there. 10 and 59, we've discussed Upper Sucker Creek, nothing notable there, working on the marsh walk. Dan Street, that's just sitting there at this point till we figure out what's happening with Peter and Legion Road, because I'd like to combine those projects. Airport water main loop, by and large, we're done for the year. There'll be a significant amount of work yet to do on that next spring. Legion, I think that's going to drop off, like we said. We approved the report, but we'll wait until some further action by the railroad. And Peter Street, I believe we have a hearing scheduled for January.
Okay. Nothing else here, Honor.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the finance committee, Ron?
I have one new item, and I'm going to call on Chief Tim to explain to us about our new drug force officer that we're going to be having here in Detroit Lakes once again, and also the request for a used vehicle, so he has something to drive. Tim?
Sure. Beginning January 1st, we're officially going to be entering in with the Lakes to River Drug and Violent Crimes Task Force. Gary Kuhn is going to be our drug task force officer. He'll need a vehicle, and so he went out and found one at Nearson Chevrolet. It's a used one. Normally we would do a bid tabulation. To do that on a used vehicle is almost impossible because of the apples to apples. It's tough to compare. So he found one at Nearson Chevrolet. It's a 2009 Chevy Traverse, and for $15,000. We have that money in our DWI forfeiture fund and our drug forfeiture fund, and it won't deplete either one of them. So just requesting permission for the purchase of the vehicle.
Okay, the committee is, because we have the funds available, the committee recommends that we go ahead and purchase this used vehicle for the amount of $15,000, so we have a vehicle for the new drug force officer.
Second. Motion's been made and seconded to authorize the purchase of a used vehicle for the Detroit Lakes Police Department for use in the Lakes to River Drug Violent Crime Task Force. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried.
Thanks, sir.
Public Safety Committee will go to Chairman Waller.
Thank you, Your Honor. Item 8A, consideration to a resolution in the matter of authorizing the execution of an agreement between the Detroit Lakes Police Department and the Minnesota Department of Public Safety for traffic safety projects. Basically, what this would allow the chief to apply for a grant that would be a 50% match for some possible equipment purchases down the road. Did I get it all in there?
Yep. Okay.
And after discussion of the committee, we so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to adopt a resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between the DLPD and the Minnesota Department of Public Safety to enable us to possibly get a 50% grant match in the future for equipment. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
Nothing for
Anything else? Alan, did you have, was there anything else on the liquor?
Yeah, one other thing that's not on the, Randy has some things going on this Thursday at the liquor store. Maybe you can clue us in a little bit, Randy?
Yep, Thursday is a special day. We're gonna have some giveaways and we have special pricing throughout this week for those that can't make it on Thursday. But we're going to have, 10 to 12 to 15 vendors in there doing some sampling of different products. So that's gonna be from 4 to 7. So if you're in the neighborhood, stop in and sample some adult beverages.
Did you invite Santa?
And feel free to buy after you've sampled. That increases our liquor fund.
Thanks, Alan. Bruce, we have an item on the Public Utilities Commission. Will you field that?
I certainly can, Mayor, and depends upon what your feeling is here. I could have Pam give a half-hour presentation. Otherwise, right now, the Public Utilities Commission has reviewed the 2015 budget, recommends approval, and I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the 2015 Public Utilities budget. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried.
One other item, Your Honor, we do have a union contract there that's been negotiated, and I believe Mr. Waller was going to refer to that.
I was, thank you. We've come to an agreement fairly quickly with the IBEW union, and the particulars are available afterwards if you'd like. But it fits within our budget, and we move for approval.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the labor agreement with the IBEW union at City of Detroit Lakes. Discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion's carried. Noted that GL was opposed. Anything else, Marty?
No, sir.
Okay. Bob, or any city staff, any additional items that should come before the council? Before we get too much further, I just want to introduce our two new city council people who are here tonight. We have Barb Schiller and Jay Sherman, and we'll be swearing them in January, and we'll welcome you to the council, and congratulations on your elections.
This is one of our shorter meetings.
I have not been able to track down Dr. Haggard to talk to him about the HRA. I did talk to Jim Hedstrom, and Jim is willing to serve another term on the Detroit Lakes Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and I would like to recommend to the council that we approve him for another term.
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to reappoint Jim Hedstrom to the Detroit Lakes Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried. I did distribute a slate of directors for the new Detroit Mountain Recreation Area Board, and that'll be the board that serves the city council rather than the board that was established for the construction of the mountain. And the city representatives would be from the city council, Madeline Suki, from our public utilities, Gary Nansen. Gary, by the way, is no longer employed there. He was helping on a compensated basis during the construction, but now he's done with that. And then Dan Josephson, who's our park board chairman, is he? Dan, yes. Park board chairman? So those would be the three city reps, and then the representatives from the Detroit Mountain Recreation Area are listed below. So that's the slate of officers or directors that I'd like to recommend for approval of the city council.
So moved.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the, is it 9 or 10 members?
Just approve the city appointment. You're approving the three city.
Three city, okay. We're just approving the three, just so we clarify the motion. Discussion on the motion?
Just to clarify, these are 3-year terms. up to 3 3-year terms, correct?
Yes, they fall under the same guidelines as our other.
Charlie, do you know, are they staggering the other terms so you don't have, all these people going off the board at one time?
The short answer is I don't know. I haven't read their updated
Okay.
bylaws. At some point in time in their previous bylaws, they did have a staggered.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion's carried. Just for information, the city's received $430.78 from the West Central Initiative via the Hildred, Shell, and Long Trust, is that correct, or is that a misspelling? For beautification purposes, so we want to thank that trust for that donation to the city. Information and announcements. Our former city attorney, Bill Briggs, is retiring after 44 years of law practice. So where is Bill? I thought he'd come tonight.
He'd love to, but he preferred to go to Florida instead.
Okay. Also, I'd like to invite you all to stay for cake and coffee after the meeting, honoring Alderman G.L. Tucker and Alderman Al Breivik for their years of service. And I'd like to personally, on behalf of the city council, thank both Al and G.L. for your years of service. Al, you served 4 years. G.L., you served 10 years. You guys did a great job, and we got a lot of stuff done in the city, so thank you. And with that, I've got a couple plaques. I'd like to give this plaque to Al Breivik on 4 years of service from January 1st, 2011 through December 31st of 2014, certificate of appreciation from the city of Detroit Lakes. Thanks, Al. Thank you. Also to GL, 10 years of service, serving from January 1st, 2005 through December 31st, 2014. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, on Tuesday, January 13th at 7 a.m. here at City Hall, we'll be hosting the quarterly City County School College Chamber Quarterly Intergovernmental Meeting right here at City Hall. Also on January 6th at 5 p.m. per our charter, we are required to hold an annual council meeting. There won't be much on the agenda. I would like to invite the new council members to come in, and we would swear them in at that time, so hopefully you can make it to that meeting. And then the following Tuesdays, we start our regular meetings. And then every couple years, we've kind of adjusted the seating, so I'm gonna move the plaques around a little bit so everybody gets to know everybody. And also, I included in the agenda the new committees for next year. The asterisk indicates who the chairman of the committee would be. And what I did here is I kind of went back the last, I went 10 years for some of you to see what committees you were on and tried to move it around so you're able to serve on different committees and whatnot. So hopefully you're okay with that. And I think I would like to have a motion approving these council committees if I could.
So
Seconded.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the 2015 council committees. Discussion on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion's carried. And on the final page, and I really gotta go to the bathroom. On the final page is the council dates for next year. Is there anything else that any staff member has or anyone in the audience? If not, Bruce, go ahead.
I'm just going to say, you said already, but thanks again to Al and Jill. And to show their dedication, they actually came to this last meeting, which is over 2 hours. And I just want you guys to know, by the way, I'm taping this at home. I'm going to give that as my final gift to you. You'll have a tape of your last 12 meeting.
Boy, you guys are lucky. David, do you have anything else? Alan?
I just want to mention that I've enjoyed my years on the council, and I've appreciated working and finding out just how this operates. And for you new members, even though you've campaigned on transparency, as you can see, no matter how hard we tried, there were some problems that we had to solve even at the meetings. For instance, the Dutch elm thing, the weed cutting, the transportation of prisoners, the radio system, Sky Digital signs,
These are just some things that we worked on all year, all month, and so good luck.
Okay, thank you. Madeline, anything else?
Nothing, just to thank GL for all the time. You were a big help for me when I was new, so that was great. And Al, thank you for being a good partner next to each other.
Ron?
Yeah, I too want to say thanks to Al and to GL for the work you did on the council, and I also want to say thank you again to Pam for the great job she did on the budget this last year. It took a lot of hours. Also, the people on the finance committee and all the council people who are here in August trying to work this out, and a big thank you to Bob, our city manager, to work on this. For us to be in the financial situation that we're very fortunate, and like I said, we're lucky that we're probably not getting the LGA we like to have, but we're lucky on the other end that we've got things going in the right direction. That means people want to live here in Detroit Lakes, and we're very fortunate to have that. There's a lot of other cities that wish they could share that with us. So thanks again to all of you for your help on that.
Jill?
Well, the less, as you all know, the less I say, the smarter I sound. I just don't always practice it. But I'd just like to thank everybody. My time on the council, I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed working with everybody. I especially enjoyed working with council people, especially the city staff. We got a great city staff. You guys and ladies do a terrific job. You're always pleasant. You're always got a smile on your face no matter how many people have been here complaining, and there's a lot of them. And so I really appreciate the hard work you do, the heavy lifting you do, and I've appreciated working with you. And I will come back because you guys got more treats than anybody I've ever known in my life in the breaker. And last, just the council, best of luck in the future. You got a great city, and to the new people, especially Jay, good luck. You'll do great. And that's all I got. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Jill.
I share the same sentiments as the council, and thank you to the city staff. Great year.
Well, I'm going to say I am going to miss serving with Al and GL. Looking forward to serving with the new members. I agree we have a great city staff, and they provide a lot of continuity as the elected officials change over, so thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Ron just reminded me that it's either at 3:15 or 4:15, the holiday train is going to be here in Detroit Lakes at the Sioux Line Depot on Sunday, so it's always a fun deal. It sounds like the weather's, the last few years have been like 30 below, but it sounds like the weather will be nice.
That was like the Home Street crossing.
Yeah, but we don't want to get too warm to melt the snow at Detroit Mountain, but if you haven't been out there, you should go out and see it. It's really cool. Hearing no additional business, this meeting is adjourned.